we're getting to the point where writing code ourselves is slower, but it's more purposeful, more intentional. And that's where like this artisan part comes from. I mean, like, I want to write the code. I'm not going to use CodeGentle. But I think one of the most important things is how do we actually interact with it? How do we actually get the thoughts? We've seen a massive shift even in the last month to 2 months with plan modes coming in, where we're actually spending more time writing the plans. We've gone from an industry where it's like, I don't want to write a plan, I don't want to, request comment, I just want to code it, to now we're all like planning, like we are the plan people, we write the plans. Oh, the more detailed, the better. Me and my team member was walking down the road and I said, you know what? We should change our auth from magic links to codes, because magic links are probably getting caught in spam filters. When the codes, they'll just type it in. And literally, she span it up on her phone. She told Claude, hey, swap this out. Here's the context. And by the time we finished going to the end of the road, we already had the PR ready to look at.
In my team at Vercel with professional services, we engage with those enterprises. And I can tell you that still we are early. Copilot is the most proliferated across enterprises. But the tools like, they're still lagging a little bit behind, X, this hype in those enterprises. And that means that I believe those enterprises still prefer to go with the software house agency, pay normal daily rates, whatever the rates are. And you can use all those newest tools, bank on this efficiency, 10x. And those enterprises, I would say 50% of them, 60% of them have got a Copilot. Some of them have Cursor, but running like those agents, like you're taking, 5 Jira tickets, let's say, and you're working on simultaneously, I don't see this happening a lot in enterprises. That's a perfect time for agencies to actually ramp up on this efficiency. So are you, as a Blazity, using any skills?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that. We are using a lot of skills. We're using a lot of external skills that have been created, and we're also open sourcing our own.
Your own, yeah?
Yeah, we released actually yesterday the tools for migrating into Next.js that were announced on our meetup. Give them access to the tools, give them access to the tokens. Like a small group of developers can actually achieve what teams of like 50 people do.
Hello and welcome into Blazity podcast. Hello from London. Today with me, I have 3 fine gentlemen. So Chris Burns from C15T.
Hi.
Dom Sipowicz from Vercel.
Hello.
And JJ from Blazity.
Hi.
So today we'll cover, I think, a lot of pretty open, vast topics, but at the same time, super important, I think, for current discussion about, of course, about the AI, about agentic, presence in our work. But I want to start with the question, do you still think that AI needs you, engineers?
Okay, I'm going to start. Let me just introduce myself maybe first very quickly. So I work for Vercel for more than 4 years in professional services team. We work mostly for enterprise customers, the largest ones, and I specialize in Next.js, e-commerce, web performance, and Gen AI. I'm helping enterprises to adopt workflows, AI workflows, and that's me. To answer your question, are we still needed? Yes, 100%. I do believe that today is actually the best time to be an engineer. If you're a cracked engineer, you're following the trends, you're actually learning on your job every day, new stuff. There's an explosion, Cambrian explosion of new workflows, AI tools, and this mythical 10x engineer that usually been only in FANG companies in Silicon Valley is now the AI is making all engineers to become a 10x engineers. So I believe the companies need those people. However, the most important thing is I think it's not a question whether we are needed, but what are you doing with this? So you need to level up, learn, go to meetups, watch YouTube, courses, and keep up with the new stuff on the internet.
Sure. So, guys, what do you think?
I really like how the question is phrased, if AI still needs us, first of all. Like, whenever the Copilot first appeared, we were like, do we need it? Like, is it needed? Is it actually accelerating our work? And right now it's, are we still needed? But yeah, I think the same that, like Dom said, I think that this is the best time to be an engineer. We have great tools to just generate code. If you can manage those agents, it's a little bit of different skill set now required. Instead of just like writing code line by line, it's a bit of like managing code reviews and also like architecture analysis of what the AI is trying to do. So yeah, like from our perspective at the agency, if you know us, you know that we're a software agency. We specialize in Next.js. It's definitely something that we are taking a big advantage of, but it's not taking over any jobs yet. It's just making all the process faster and more robust. For example, the agentic code reviews. It's something very powerful.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting subject because I've been around for programming for like 15 years, and the last 4 years has felt like 43 years. 3 years in normal time, then 1 year being 40 with AI time. And one of the biggest things that I joke with my team is like, I still like to write artisan code. We're getting to the point where writing code ourselves it's slower, but it's more purposeful, more intentional. And that's where like this artisan part comes from. I mean, like, I want to write the code. I'm not going to use code like a code gentle. But I think one of the most important things is, how do we actually interact with it? How do we actually get the thoughts? We've seen a massive shift even in the last month to 2 months with plan modes coming in, where we're actually spending more time writing the plans. We've gone from an industry where it's like, I don't want to write a PDR. I don't want to write a plan. I don't want to, request comment. I just want to code it. To now we're all like planning, like we are the plan people. We write the plans. Oh, the more detailed, the better, the more intrinsic it is. And it's almost like we're getting to a point where it's like, actually, the more detailed it is, the longer the agent runs to leave me to do other things. It's not like we want the shortest agents to constantly be feeding back to us now. It's like, there's this mythical one shot, and there's a mythical one shot of a very simple web page. Sure, AI can do that. But now the true mythical one shot is like a whole feature that you wrote this elegant Bible of a document for the AI to go, I'll get on it.
It's not mythical. You can do that if you're good in prompt skill issue, right? And if you give the requirements, like acceptance criteria, then you can Ralph it, which is, one shot it, leave it running for a few hours, and, battery of unit tests, it's happening.
Yeah, of course. And this is the thing. What is Ralph is a really interesting thing. So this Simpsons character, Ralph Wiggum, is this name for this system where you basically have this long prompt with a massive to-do list, you say 10 to 15, and the biggest problem with all of these agents is context. And as it starts stepping through more and more of the steps, it gets the context bigger and bigger and gets more degraded in the output. So Ralph Wiggum, a loop, to what I understand, is literally after each step, it's basically killed and said, reread this with a fresh context to now make this as best as possible. I think it's something that's still really early in terms of adoption, i.e., people are using it in people are using it in like Claude Code, but not necessarily in your cursors or your IDEs yet.
No, it's a methodology, right? And it's also because people don't want to burn too much tokens, and this one will burn a lot of tokens. Like, I think we have this shift in the companies that the companies need to understand that this is the budget. Like, they need to put a budget for burning those tokens. Like, enable their 10x engineers. This is how you do it. For example, at Vercel, we have access to Cloud Code via API gateway, in Cursor, in any AI tools we want, and all Vercel employees got access to it.
This shows nicely how we have a completely different skill set that we actually need to adopt to use AI. And
Exactly.
there is a learning curve still, but it's completely different, like context management, like prompting, making lists that the agent can like restart from the certain points from the file system and not keeping all in the context. All of that is quite interesting. Like we made a shift from at the beginning, people were trying to just like one-shot things with the prompt, which was one sentence.
Yeah, exactly. You were experimenting recently a lot with those loops, like agents, sub-agents. So what's your take on this? What's your feeling about this as a, experienced engineer trained in the, let's say, old school? I don't know if there is any new school already in place, but let's say old school way. So you have the math background, engineering background, you understand the principles, but now you are, I don't want to, put it into too shallow context, but creating a to-do list, as Chris put it, for some serious black box that will, give you some output and you are either happy with it or you have to tweak the to-do list. Is it something closer or is there more in it?
Like it's a very wide topic. Definitely there's, like we can see that the more instruction, the more detailed the instruction is, the better the agent is. And also, if the agent can ask questions, this is also very, very important. Because sometimes even if you prompt it to ask questions if they need anything, they still ignore it and just go ahead. But if you make the prompt good enough, if you're good in the prompt engineering...
What does it mean good enough?
You can foresee what the agents will do based on your experience, basically. Like the agents are getting better and better and understanding your prompts just by the natural language better. But you, just by trial and error, you can see that if you just ask him to ask a question if you need something and it gets ignored, then you just add an exclamation mark section important and then it picks it up. It's just like trying to figure it out yourself. But the plans and the questions, it's very important.
Like one of my favorite things that agents can still be so stupid about is, you say, oh, I need to move files from here to here. And the agent's first thing is to literally rewrite the file, i.e. rewrite it. Instead, you saying your prompts, use tools like git move, to do it more effectively. And I've seen that be an optimization that I've had to manually put in. Some models will just copy the file by looking at it and then rewriting it. And you think the amount of tokens that it's using. I think that we're seeing a lot of different loops start to exist. We're obviously seeing this planning and this coding loop exist very well. But I think we're still so early on actually the review loop. How do we actually talk about how to make it as good as possible? There's I don't know what the word is.
Reinforcement learning.
Reinforcement loops. Exactly. As in different models about different things. And one of the biggest tools is out there right now is your actually code review tools. So things like your Vercel agent or your CodeRabbit or your greptile. And when I speak to people, I think this is really interesting. Some people it's I only want it to notify me on the highest level problems. When we have it set to give us all the nitpicks, give us all of the accessibility, all of the things that you think could be a problem, but you're not sure. Because for us, it's we're only going to take that list that has full of nitpicks and refeed it into the loop to make the code even better. And I think that we're in this really interesting part where we look at code and it's are we now writing code for ourselves or are we writing it for, the agents? When we write comments, Are we writing comments for ourselves or are we writing comments for the agents? And I think it's really interesting. I had a team member being well, this file is, only 50-line function, but then the comment is 100 lines.
Wait, actually, let me stop you here. So that's actually an interesting take because we represent 3 different worlds, right? I'm representing an infra, Vercel, AI cloud. You're representing a product, a startup, and you're representing an agency. So what you just said, how do you let's find the differences. Are we using the same, exactly the same, those tools, those agents, or are you shaping this prompting a little bit differently?
Or the way that you're using is different, or different flavors, or maybe different principles even.
So are you okay with those comments because you are as a product owner?
Yeah, see, for me, I think having as much context in the files is much better because, again, as you try and reuse them, get them using in other functions, it's very useful.
Are you cutting any corners as a startup? Sorry.
I think that's an interesting one. What it's really allowed us to do is not cut corners, but move on critical issues faster. There's been times where, someone says, oh, I just really need this fixing. Or we'll say, wouldn't it be better if we just do that quickly? And trying to think about, make a ticket for it, put it in the backlog. The latest thing we said is just stick an agent on it. See if you can just get it done. Like, for example, me and my team member was walking down the road and I said, you know what? We should change our auth from magic links to codes because magic links are probably getting caught in spam filters. When the codes, they'll just type it in. And literally, she span it up on her phone. She told Claude, hey, swap this out. Here's the context. And by the time we finished going to the end of the road, we already had the PR ready to look at. And it's that thing of like, what's been so useful for us is as soon as we say, wouldn't it be great if we just add that small thing or this small tweak, instead of saying put it in the backlog, we've had an agent just start writing a plan, work it out, get it merged as fast as possible.
What about agency? Like, because it's ad hoc decision making, and you need to always, like, you've got this feedback loop with the customer.
Like, from agency perspective, probably the speed is the biggest issue. We have deadlines that we need to meet. We have external clients. It's not our own products very often that we work on. So but our answer is a bit different because we are not only optimizing for speed, we are also focusing very much on the quality of the product.
So you're not cutting corners. Sorry.
Yeah, we try to avoid it as possible because, as you know, like when you're working in software development, if you just accumulate the tech debt, it gets out of hand really quick. What we try to do is just like when we are rewriting an app, we want to have it run for a long time. We want to maintain it later. We are not just building an app and selling to the client. Very often we have a maintain phase and we are actually cooperating with them. So it's no good for us as well if we just make a code base that's terrible and unmaintainable.
And I will also add to this that we have to be very careful with what we are doing and what we are introducing right now as an agency, because there is a fine line between using AI agents in a good, productive way and introducing something that can be quote unquote scary for the customer, too quick, too weird, too new, etc., etc. Not every customer, from our experience, is, let's say, prone to use all this advantage, all this, edge that AI is giving. Sometimes our work is much more fundamental, I would say. We have to convince, discuss, show the value. And also there is, I would say, at least from my perspective, like overproduction of content right now, words. And there is this notion, I would say, that people are starting to spot, the AI and thinking, well, if you don't have time for me, you're using some AI to write a proposal or to describe me something, why bother? I can do this. I have my subscription. So why should I talk with you?
What, the customer?
Yeah.
To be honest, I have input on that because, in my team at Vercel with professional services, we engage with those enterprises. And I can tell you that still we are early. They're not, Copilot is the most proliferated across enterprises, but the tools they're still lagging a little bit behind, X, this hype in those enterprises. And that means that I believe those enterprises still prefer to go with the software house agency, pay normal daily rates, whatever the rates are. And you can use all those newest tools, bank on this efficiency, 10x, and those enterprises, I would say 50% of them, 60% of them have got a Copilot. Some of them have Cursor, but running like those agents, like you're taking, I don't know, five Jira tickets, let's say, and you're working on simultaneously. I don't see this happening a lot in enterprises. I think that's a perfect time for agencies to actually ramp up and on this efficiency.
I think the other thing that when I think about using external providers like agencies, the number one thing for me that I look for most is taste, is that I can trust them to go further than I can. I think this is very important around creativity, where it's like, I could AI generate a website, but it's not going to be to the level that I want it to be. And knowing that that level of taste is still outside the range of AI agents.
No, we as a Vercel, we released the skill for Claude Code with the best practices and guidance of design as well. So you can actually mimic the Vercel's taste, I would say.
Yeah, but who wants to mimic black and white with simple icons?
I think you did. Like, check your website. Check your website.
But it's a good point. It's a good point. It's a struggle, real struggle. I would say that for us, and our discussion today is also somehow touching this, like why people still need agencies, will need agencies when they have agents.
Yeah, I think you're in a good position. I think
Well,
as a
you want to
Vercel,
believe that.
No, as your official Vercel partner,
Of course.
expert in Next.js, and I know that you did a lot of those migrations. It's good to know that you're on the cutting edge. You're using those AI tools and agents. It's great.
Yeah, it just shows that actually the tech skills and the knowledge of the migration of the technology is now standing up. It's something that is very important. It's not like people are just having existing teams with a bad code base. They're like putting money into AI tools for the same people, for the same technical skills.
Everyone's do that.
And it's not really making it any better. It generates a lot of code, yes. But
speaking of skills, sorry for interruption. So are you as a Blazity using any skills?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that. We are using a lot of skills. We're using a lot of external skills that have been created, and we're also open sourcing our own.
Your own, yeah?
Yeah, we released actually yesterday the tools for migrating into Next.js that were announced on our meetup in London. So
have you added it? That's a good stuff. Have you added it to skills.sh? There's a public directory that Vercel created. Oh, you added it.
We made it, it was explicitly made to work and to be easily installed into the skills.
What's the skill about?
It's migrating into Next.js from legacy technologies and also from internal Next to Next, so version bumps and also pages to app router and stuff like that, but mostly focusing on legacy apps like WordPress, Angular, Vue, and whatever old stack you have. I mean, of course, it's not only old, but into migration into Next.js, basically.
So that means that if our customers will go to Blazity to migrate from WordPress to Next.js and deploy it on Vercel, obviously, right? Hopefully, it's going to be cheaper to go with Blazity, right? Because the efficiency you've got, right? And the skill.
Maybe not the cheaper, but like the rate, the possibility of actually making the migration, and like we have a process built in. So it's much faster for us. So like, yeah, it might
the quality
take,
you mentioned.
It might take less time. So in the total, it might be a bit cheaper. That's true. But it's not like the man hours are now cheaper just because people are using AI. It's still an expertise needed to actually use those tools. So
yeah, I think this is actually a really interesting subject. And I shared with the group last night that for the first time, Y Combinator is actually now looking at agencies and saying agencies can now apply for Y Combinator. If you don't know what YC is, it's one of these prolific accelerators out in the Bay that's been very attached to startups, companies, products, saying, okay, join this, we will accelerate growth and accelerate getting you in front of the right people. But for the first time in spring 2026, they're now saying agencies can apply. I think this is a really interesting concept because how I think about this is that agencies of the future are not necessarily open sourcing everything. They're basically skill hoarders. They say you need to convert a website from WordPress to Next.js. We're going to do it. No, it's not about being cheaper. It's about being faster and higher quality and with the same price. And I think that we're seeing this be this interesting take where YC is saying, okay, if you have all of these different skills, you're taking this professional services, and a lot of startups kind of fall into this where they're like, oh, we sell a product. Then sooner or later, they slowly migrate to just being professional services and really the optimization and efficiency. And I think we are going to start seeing this balloon in like manpower to revenue return for agencies, where it's gone from this model of feast and famine being like, we have loads of jobs, no jobs, to we can hire a smaller team who's more efficient, but we have this tool chest of skills and AI tools and reusability to output quality at a certain level.
Absolutely, 100%. This is also my take, and we've spent hours and hours in Blazity talking about exactly this topic. And JJ, I think it's also very interesting, and maybe you can share a little bit more about your thinking about the compound effect or accumulation effect that is right now can be really blooming because we are sort of accumulating knowledge through the years and years of doing audits, doing migrations, performance optimizations. By the way, migrations and performance optimizations are two of our main skills, our main services. So throughout the years, we accumulated a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
And it is a huge problem in the agencies, what to do with this knowledge, how to structure it, how to build this architecture of information, right? And right now, I feel finally it's possible. Am I right?
Yeah, definitely. It's very easy to see. A small group, like our bet of our company was we want to specialize in very small field, but be an expert at it. And right now, a few of our best engineers, if you just give them access to the tools, give them access to the tokens, like a group of small group of developers can actually achieve what teams of 50 people do. Yeah, we have actually it's not even an overstatement. It's actually happening when we are auditing client application and asking how large teams they have. We very often propose a single developer for a group of 11, for example, and they think we're crazy, but we are doing it. We are maintaining those size of apps. It just needs to if you have a skill and you have the tools to do it, it's not about the amount of the people anymore in the company, which sucks a bit if you are looking for a job because the market is right now hard, but for the company and efficiency perspective, it's amazing.
I think we too often say that the market is hard. The market, I would say, was always hard, but it's shifting right now. Something is happening. Something really profound is happening right now. And I do think also, and thank you, Dom, by the way, for mentioning our open source, because I do think that this part of our work stands on two main pillars. The open source is one of them because open source is also an accumulated knowledge, how to do things. Our next enterprise, for example, is one of the things that we've done years ago because we are in this, let's say, open source part for years now. And it's a highly started project on GitHub, which is really helping to speed up 30%, 40% of spinning the project, right? So right now with this agentic support, I want to say that we are, as you said, even better in this, better and better, almost every day.
Yeah, and then right now the fundamentals of the app are more important than ever because AI is very good at picking up the patterns. So if you have a terrible code base from the beginning and you add a new feature on top of it before refactoring it and making it organized and well structured, it will be a mess.
Absolutely. And I wanted to ask you, Chris, about something because we in agency, we see a lot of clients, potential clients, prospects coming to us with their vibe-coded apps. And they're saying, well, I don't know anything about coding, but I vibe-coded this one. Looks that it's working. So can you audit it and fix here and there? And we're shipping next month. From the founder perspective, from the product perspective, what do you think about building products nowadays?
Okay. I think there's two very different fundamentals of thinking that are coming out very fast. Vibe coding is one side, but I think agentic coding, development, is the other side. And aren't these the same thing? We're using AI to generate things. I think the difference to me is, somebody vibe coding is based upon going off of vibe. It's based upon, I don't know these. I don't know programming. I don't know infrastructure. I don't know fundamentals. I'm building something. And, we have to take it for a moment that it's super impressive that your mum or, your dad could build an application. Doesn't matter if it, because they don't care about the code. That is vibe coding. And I think it's a super impressive feat of technology we've achieved. But when I think about agentic coding, we spent so much time really working on, you could say, the infrastructure of the product. For example, the coding infrastructure. Like, our linters are very, very strict. Like, stricter. Like, if I was coding it, there'd be no you'd just get so annoyed at the amount of lint errors. When to an agent, it's like, oh, I know all these best in practices. It's all great. Accessibility, putting all of these linters to be super strict, I think is really important to keep the quality high of the code. But then I think the biggest other areas that we're only starting to see the biggest success on is a shared component library. So we are sharing a component library between every single app that we build, every single website, no matter if it's a dashboard, internal dashboard, app, it's the same code. But then I'm writing the skills on how to use that component library manually. So we can go from the idea, the ticket, hey, we need to build this feature, to saying, okay, pulling our custom component library, pulling all the other contexts, give it a first run and seeing how far it got. And some features, no tweaking needed. After the whole Agentic loops run, everything looks great. Other times, it completely misses. But I think the biggest fundamentals right now are setting up the tools to be as strict as possible, because again, AI can code to the much stricter one without getting annoyed, quite simply. And finding that balance, I think the area that this whole workflow is still super weak in is tests, because we can say, write tests, and it goes, I've wrote 100 tests. You have no clue if them tests are even remotely true or not. And then now we're seeing companies get funded where it's like the whole testing infrastructure is broken. And it's like, should we actually go back to test-driven development where we're writing the tests, not the products, or writing the report, writing the plan to be like, this is what I want you to test. So that's like something that now I'm dealing with internally. Is like, actually, we need to test certain parts like the component library so it always works between every application, and then say, well, you can't, all these AI agentic flows, you can't edit the component library, because if you edit the component library to fix your code here, you're going to break 3 other applications. So I think there's a system that we're yet to get to where it's locking certain paths in this monorepo support. Again, monorepos are another really big thing, having all that context in one place with all these different skills. The one thing that I do think is quite interesting is, 6 months ago, a year ago, 40 years before AI, we had rules, but rules have now been no, don't use rules, use skills. And then I think another really big thing that we're yet to see with skills is the balance between MCP, so having a skill interact with an MCP server versus having a skill interact with a CLI. And I think skills that interact with CLIs will be more efficient in the long run than skills that interact with an MCP server. But this is all, we'll find out next week in terms of AI.
That's a good one. So you touch on tests. So let's cover, from different perspective, this testing. Are you using AI for testing?
Yeah. So we have things like Vitest set up across our applications, but that is, one of the areas that we need to spend better on. I think the biggest one is the visual tests. I think tools like Storybook or Cypress or Playwright are very underfunded in startups. And that's some startups don't even get to strict linting. So that's a really good first step, is get the strict linting, get the types as specific as possible in TypeScript. And then it's all the tests pass, but the functionality still seems broken.
So it's pretty cool because this is bread and butter for enterprises. Mm-hmm. Everyone, what you mentioned, all of this and much more, end-to-end as CI/CD pipeline, you want to plug into this AI workflow. Yeah. But it's good to see that startups doing that.
We're also using a lot of tests written by AI, but our issue is that, from my perspective at least, it very often produces too much test instead of like not enough.
So unit testing or end-to-end testing?
Unit testing, mostly unit testing, yeah. So what we're doing mainly is adding rules to avoid like tests for the test's sake, coverage for the coverage sake, because it doesn't bring any value. If you have this workflow that AI is writing all of the tests for you, then you add a feature, you break 15 tests every time, you don't check all of them, you just tell AI to fix the tests, and it's starting to get like completely unnecessary. You're not controlling what are you actually testing if you do that. The goal is to have a test for the core functionality. When you change something that actually is an error, then it should error out. But when you change something that like a copy, it shouldn't break the test. And you're changing the copy. At least the copy is actually very important for something else, if the other app is using this or something.
From Vercel perspective, we want to make, the holistic system, so the agent or whatever, the AI, to be aware of all the code and access to observability, access to Vercel SDK, CLI. And given that, you can actually go a level above. So you can run those tests, you can spot from observability that something is in real time happening wrong, create an alert, or even submit a PR with the fix, because you have access to code and all the information, right?
So we're testing the runtime, basically.
Yeah, we're moving towards self-driving infrastructure. That's the idea, because startups wants to invest in testing. You're doing still what client wants, and you're using perfectly this AI. Enterprises, I can tell you, do all of this, and will be doing more of that. However, as a platform, I think there's a gap that we want to fill.
Yeah, I would say that like the typical thinking around like startups in this is just like push it. If it errors, how fast can you get the fix in the code as fast as possible? And the faster you can make that loop smaller, the better it is. But then I did see a really great tweet that was like uptime monitors before AI versus uptime monitors after AI. And it's like now we're constantly breaking things. Yeah. But I think this is a thing where the quantity that we can get out of the door with such a small team is incredible. And even allowing people who are non-technical to have this like agent access, how do we empower people who are not the developers? How do we empower, clients to make the changes faster? How do we get that information power? How do we get that context faster?
Vercel Slack agents, Slack bots.
Yeah.
Right?
And didn't Guillermo say something about like putting an agent on every desk?
Yeah. Good question though.
Okay, I can start with that. So it's literally in my team. We are forward deploy engineers. So we have those engagements with enterprises. That was announced on Ship AI last year. It's an initiative that enterprises obviously know and see what's going on the market. Like if you're not going to invest in AI, improve your efficiency and your processes, it's going to be too late for you. So we identified that enterprises have issues how to start. The technology itself, like developers knows everything what's going on, they follow, but the enterprises, they don't know how to start. So initiative, every agent on every desk, it's like a similar concept to what Bill Gates created with Microsoft in the 90s, like promise that computer on every desk, and we know it happened. So kind of Vercel wants to have agent on every desk, go and help and make the world better. And if an enterprise don't know how to start, okay, we have professional services that we can forward deploy our engineers to help you discover, run discovery phase to which agents to go first, build it with you as a forward deployed engineer, teach you, and then you can create more agents on your own, having this experience with the best practices from Vercel.
Yeah,
that's our initiative, and I know that also agencies are doing the same thing.
I went to a conference in Paris last week, and someone from OpenAI spoke, and they've got very similar teams internally. They're called
forward deployed engineers.
It's something more fancy. They're a bit more fancy over there. But basically, their team is like, how can we put AI into the accounting team? How can we put AI into the HR team? Use the tools that you're comfortable with. We're going to observe, and then we're going to say, okay, let's split this out. Let's put AI into this area. Let's put AI into this area. I think what this allows us to do across the board is work our teams far much more efficiently. One, by bringing down the communication barrier to be like, how do I do this?
That's discovery phase, yeah.
The discovery effects. But then the second thing is access to knowledge is going to be so much smaller. I think we're still very early on the true interface to connect all of these knowledges together. Don't know if it will be things like ChatGPT and ChatGPT
I have actually take on that,
but
if I may. Yeah. And I'm also interested about your take. So from our perspective, what we see, Slack or Microsoft Teams is actually number one for triggering those background jobs as an agent, asynchronous orchestrators. You can have your existing internal panels, back-end office, CRM, CMS, your back office basically, where you have a button just to kick off the job in the background, kick off the agent, or action reaction to react to the events. Event can be an email, a lead, a new meeting, after meeting, something that triggers. But still, you can have the output on the email or other stuff. But mostly, what we've seen in practice, and we dog food, we have probably 20 agents inside Vercel. 10 are really heavily used, on a daily basis. It's Slack driven.
I think that's really interesting because just as you were speaking, it's I'd love to have an internal text to SQL where it's we need to get this out of the database to help with customer support. It'd be just say it to it quickly and be I'm going to put together the SQL query and work it out and give you the information. I think there's still so much more bandwidth in this. My biggest question is, are these tools going to be provided to us by services, or are we going to build them ourselves on a lower level with tools like the AI SDK?
Very good question. And I think, JJ, this is touching the very core of what we are doing with the clients in the agency, because we are facing so many different domain knowledge areas. We need to be sometimes a jack of all trades. So you're entering a new vertical, you're entering a new client, and the clock is ticking. You have to learn the domain, gather enough knowledge to speak freely, to speak fluently with the customer. At the same time, technologies in the background is a fundamental thing. But without this domain knowledge, well, the discussion can be very sketchy or just not interesting for anybody.
Yeah, this is a topic very close to my heart because I'm experimenting a lot with it. And we are right now trying to do a bunch of different stuff with agents, and for the technical people and also non-technical people. Whenever we have a new lead, we are working on a couple of tools. So first of all, I gather all information about the client. And this is something common. This was also something that I think Udom said yesterday at the meetup. But also, for example, to assess a migration that we very often do, we need to know how many pages there are, how many components there are. You can you can see the components from the pages from the sitemap, but it can every page can be completely different, or they can have a complete certain layouts that you can only implement once, and then just contents comes, and you don't have to actually develop all of those different ones. So agents that crawl through the website and group all of the components and say estimate the complexity and group them together and try to estimate, okay, this is the hero banner. We can have those two come together with just one single prop, and before we even have access to the code base of the client, we can already assess something.
That's interesting, by the way, that right now on a surface level, some years ago, we were sort of blind before looking at code.
I mean, we could do it, but it took hours of work.
So you automated like a pre-engagement.
Yes.
Your
Pre-discovery phase.
nice. That's pretty cool.
I actually think that's a really interesting subject that you'll see in potentially many months is actually forward deploying agents for the consumers, customers being like, we will build the Slack bot to communicate between these cross services and run it for you. It will sit in your Slack. And I think it comes back to this. Agencies are used to like creative designs, like websites, apps, or actually building, but we're taking advantage of building things into Slack. Nobody's coming to you saying, wait, you can build something that allows us to communicate better in Slack?
You know what? It's really interesting. Let's cross-check all across all three types of agency, startup, and enterprises. It's really important. Buy versus build. This is like a classic problem for enterprises, startups, agencies. So my question is, maybe let's start from the agency. Are you selling this offer? Like, are you seeing this uptick in customers that they want to, okay, now it's time to build? Because there's actually a great blog post published on Vercel about exactly that, buy versus build. And we are seeing the shift from whether it was a discussion conversation to right now, no, it's clearly built, custom.
Definitely, we see it, and that's why we invest in it. Because, for example, one of the open source that we released recently was Core Web Vitals dashboard,
Okay.
which is a custom solution. There are paid tools that can do that, but of course there are subscription costs. They're like limited to what they offer. And
Yeah, sure. Vercel got Vercel Speed Insights, you know.
Yeah, if you're on Vercel, then yeah, it's great. But not everyone is on Vercel, at least for now. But yeah, it allows you to very easily iterate and add your own features that the enterprises need. It's very often the case that the bigger the company has, the more custom issues they're facing. So whenever you have something that you build yourself, it's much easier to extend. So there is definitely a shift.
Any other open source agents you have?
Right now, no.
Okay.
But there are more coming, but yeah.
I can say why, because still we said at the beginning, JJ said that the quality, we are the guardians of the quality usually. When it comes to connecting with the client's team, we are the ones who are introducing new standards. We are introducing new quality for the solution, because if they want to stay with their quality, they will never reach out to us. So what we have to be super careful right now, and it's somehow contrary to being like very, very front of this change, AI change, is that we need to deliver stuff that works. Usually we have one shot. If we show something that is half baked, half working, then the clients are like, why bother?
That's the problems with demos and most of, enterprise proof of concepts.
Exactly. So what we want to do and what we have to do and what we actually doing, what JJ is referring to, is that we are shipping stabilized open source, which we are proud of, and we are sure that it's working. That's our fundamental key part of our work, I would say right now.
But there's a second part to it for build versus buy. For our internal tooling, we right now are shifting ourselves to way more build than buy as well. Even like a human management system, like the project management and stuff like that.
Even lower level, I would say, even UI components that are already there that can be reused and reshaped just a little bit, tweaked. If I'm talking daily with customers, and every time right now when I'm proposing approach like this, I'm saying the trade-off is that it's a bit generic, but it's stable, it's faster. It can be tweaked, your branding, your brand book, your assets. 90% of them are saying, let's go for it. Let's go for this standard. If you're saying that it's baked, it's working, let's go for it. It will be cheaper, it will be faster.
I actually have a really interesting take on build versus buy, and I would say it's a slightly arrogant take.
Go for it.
Versus, and it's a hot take. And there's people that I respect in these areas a lot, who are my friends and everything, before I say this take, so I just have to say that. Certain tools, I look at it and go, do I want to build it or do I want to buy it? I start with buy. Like, I know my time is very important. So I start with buy. So you start investigating, and then you realize the question is, how much does this actually solve my problem? Versus building it will solve 100% of my problem arrogantly. Remember, arrogantly, And this was something that I was working on recently, was like, we're doing a website rebuild with a few other things. And I was like, trying out a few CMSs. And I was like, none of these feel like my level of what I want to produce. They all quite have some paper cuts that I'm not happy with.
I know where it's going. Mm-hmm.
I think I can build my own CMS. And I used AI and a lot of tokens to actually do that. I called it Christmas, for short. And now that's actually became the base of a back-end office tool set internally. So other parts of our application, our product, are actually document management system. And by building a CMS, I then took the same parts and pushed forward other parts of the company into other product areas. And it was kind of one of these things where, I call them side quests, where it's like, was it worth it building our own internal CMS? Normally, no. But because we can cross-pollinate and share so much infrastructure across multiple things, then it did become worth it building it internally. I think that is the most important thing, where building internal dashboards, this Christmas turned into back office app, where, we can now view our users, delete our users, quickly see certain statistics. And before, building an internal dashboard felt like such the biggest job. And now it's so easy.
There is so much to unpack what you just said. So basically, build versus buy, you build, but you start from the buy, but you end up still, and you went far, far away. Now we have a discussion about CMS, removing CMS or creating our own CMS. So SaaS is dead. And I guess, well, you started with hot take, right?
Yeah, we don't... I'm not sure we got the most time left to go into all these hot takes, but
no,
yes.
Obviously, opinionated. SaaS is still good, but then let's talk about the CMS maybe.
Yeah,
is it Markdown driven?
No, it's still actually the biggest thing we did was we actually backed it onto one of Vercel's newest libraries, JSON to AI, AI to JSON JSON render, but basically saying that actually the end goal is to actually use AI to generate as many things as possible, and backing that onto a standard schema of JSON. So whilst we're experimenting with it with seed scripts, the end goal is to be like, actually any internal page that we need very fast, to be like, hey, all the blocks, the schema, JSON render, build the page.
So
it's
like a V0 on the fly. You've got the data or what you need.
Exactly.
And you get the page.
Exactly. And the other tools we're building it into. So for example, consent is all about providing the infrastructure, but also the knowledge, the GDPR knowledge. So it's actually more like a knowledge hub. So by using things like JSON render, we can actually tell people the knowledge they need and have really rich, in-depth
presented in a UI
exactly.
way. Okay.
And by building this custom CMS allowed us to then start reaching out into building this into like a knowledge hub that's far much more than just text. It's the rich components. It's all these extra things. I think I could get into YC and being an AI page builder with my custom CMS, but I don't think I want to do that.
Yeah, when you connect the dots about this YC initiative right now for agencies and this CMS thing going on, because CMS migrations, right, was main driver. There is obviously e-commerce part to the agencies, but what's going on with CMS?
It's a big topic. It's still widely used, and funnily enough, right now we had a discussion about this yesterday, but the MS is slowly getting removed for some people. So it's not longer the main part is the content. You want to have some way to create content as quickly as possible. I personally use some open source CMSs while I was working on some of my private projects, but right now I don't feel I need to, because it just makes it a pain to integrate AI into. What I just used is the Markdown files.
Why not combine all of that, what we just said? JSON render for going from ideation to UI, which is literally V0, but you have programmatically. Instead of putting, you can put data and code at the same moment as a context. And with JSON render, you can create beautiful expressions of whatever you want to create the content. All of this put in Vercel Sandbox, and that would be the new version of CMS,
I mean, that's the future.
Yeah? Someone needs to create an open source project, right?
It depends if you want it to be open source, because again, it comes down to this tool of chains, the toolbox that we have. It says, why should you use us? It's because we have available all of these tools. And I think depending on the organization, depends on how much sense it makes to go down this path. And I think it goes back to the thing that I said very much earlier. To do these things well, you have to be very opinionated. You have to know what level of handling, because obviously I could have built a CMS and just said, one shot, go build me a CMS. But no, I knew, one, we've got really strict linters. Two, we've got a component library.
And it's one panel, right? One backend panel for you.
Exactly.
You combine all of it into because of AI tools and moving.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's custom.
Are you seeing the same thing with your clients? This is how you operate right now?
The shift is definitely to have a single tool instead of like
Perfect.
5 different ones. Everyone, even if...
Monoliths again.
Yes.
Yeah, we're going back and forth, but no one wants to just...
atomized monoliths, right? This is not one huge monster. It's rather the entry point for this content.
Front-end monster, yeah.
Yeah, we're decoupling the API and the database, and we're treating them like services, and then we're saying the interface they can pull into are different depending on the applications.
But there is another layer, I think, in our discussion that we're not maybe getting there yet, but still, your question, Don, by the way, is very good. How our clients are operating on the CMSs, basically. So what we see is that they kind of know or feel rather what they would like to do. But there is this pattern, like cognitive pattern, that is connected with the CMSs that is, I don't know, originating from the very old like newspaper type of, situation with the text, that you have text box and you put text in the text box and you have a placeholder for image and you put image there. So, and people are thinking, the marketing teams, growth teams, they're thinking with this pattern still. So it's very, very, for us, we are in a bubble, right? So we're talking to...
I'm going to ruin your moment. We already have at Vercel a content agent on Slack, and you just say on summarize this conversion and send me a draft link on a CMS to approve on.
I know.
It's already happening. We already have that.
We have very close relationship with, for example, media companies.
Yeah.
And they say that it is a problem right now, that there is an overflow. They're overwhelmed with content. They can create it. They can use it, but still there is a problem of filtering. Way, way more complex than for
AI
us.
slop and SEO slop, I agree that there is too much content. However, we try to put out as Vercel, for example, blog posts, whatever, we share our learnings. And I believe... And I actually know personally, because I have access to those AI crawlers and see what's they're eating the content, and you want to see this for GEO AI SEO. So this content is actually more important today than it was in the past. But you never had time for it. You found some really cool learnings on your Slack or whatever, and you don't have time to share it with the world. Write a blog post. Right now you have agent summarize it up. Give me a draft of the blog post.
I think how I just thought about this in my head is that we have to think of everything we've talked about, from coding to content generation. It's like a pyramid, without being too triangle-like.
Of course.
But the base layer is the LLM. And so that's a big area where it's allowing us to take up so much energy and time. And it says content is cheap. We can write it. But the two bigger parts are smaller, but so much more important that you could question is actually optional is one is the extra layer of inference. So when we're talking about, custom blocks, linters, all these things, you don't need them to one-shot your application, you know? But if you want to do it well, that's the area where you're spending so much time putting more skills into place, more knowledge, more expertise, more craft, more taste, with the top part of you being smaller and smaller. So again, it could go from a 2-part where it's like you're lovable, it's like you, the person, are writing one sentence to change your problem, and then the LLM is doing 80%, versus what we're talking about, Vercel, Blazity, you know, where it's like the LLM is still 20-30% of the pyramid, but the skill part, the taste, that is majority of the pyramid. That is something that AI doesn't have by default, and that is what makes the output so much more efficient.
Exactly.
So we still have jobs.
So we still have jobs.
Cool.
Great. Let's use this as a segue to thing that I'm personally interested in. Is there something, and it's a personal question, so you don't have to answer, but is there something that bothers you personally, Chris, you personally, Dom, you personally, JJ, in this whole agentic revolution? Is there any kind of like fear or uncertainty in you, any doubts about what's happening right now?
My biggest issue personally is the amount of the slop that is currently on the internet, and the creation is much easier than ever.
But you're concerned about the educational part, or?
That's true. Like, internet was for the people at the beginning. Right now it's for the agents, and the content is by the agents.
That's a hot take. Good one.
Yeah, it's crazy because we are like, what is the database for the learning of the LLMs? It's the web, and right now the AIs are creating the web. Like the whole thing about the forums for AI agents. It's
video as well.
Yeah.
Soon GPT-6 gonna know about this conversation, right?
Yeah.
Hey GPT-6, I like you.
I think my hard say on this is that generation is too cheap. Not too cheap as in creation, but I like to give it in a context. And the context I think about is, you know, anytime we see a story, a movie that is like, we don't like the ending. It's like, we can generate our, you know, half a year ago, it was, we can generate our own ending. Here's the script. Now it's, I can take the video and I can generate my own video. And we're seeing this in things like Star Wars, where people are writing their own Star Wars scripts and generating videos for it now.
It's good, actually.
And people are watching these videos. It's like...
I do.
Democracy of Star Wars. And it's like, part of me is like, it's really impressive. But the fans, you could say, are, well, it's Disney not letting us. When actually, the problem is the bureaucracy that's stopping the writers from submitting good scripts and actually getting them produced. It's not that AI is like this big thing. And just having your like geek friend being like, I wrote a better Star Wars script. I'm like, yeah, but there's a reason that's not being used. And it's not because the writers are the problem. I think that part of AI is this thing where I'm like, the creatives, they've already got a hard job. But now it's like, I could write my own script. And it's like, I wouldn't want to be a film producer right now or a script writer with the amount of AI out there. That's my hot take.
Well, I fear, I guess security, because I have a story. Like literally yesterday, I had the meeting. Normally I don't join pre-sale meetings. However, I did on that day, and there was an enterprise customer requesting an enterprise contract because to group their landing pages. During the call, I actually discovered that those all landing pages were, it's not even vibe coded. What's going to be a new word for describing when CloudBot, OpenClaw, created and span out tons of landing pages. We're talking hundreds, and a company want to get grasp of this under one umbrella of enterprise. So vibe coding is at least you're in the driving seat. Here you just go
with some force out there, right?
You are an assistant.
So we have agentic coding. That's the fancy word for what us developers like to use. Then you have vibe coding. That's like kind of like you could say this is reckless coding. Reckless,
emotion-driven coding.
So security. I think we're gonna overdo, and then maybe go back a little bit, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So this is what I fear. Yeah.
And this scenario, it's no longer clear who is the assistant.
Yeah, that's why we started with this question, if AI still needs us or needs engineers. So on that note, I think we can slowly wrap up. I thank you very much for good discussion. A lot of topics. I think we have more questions than answers, at least I have in my head. Yeah. But that's great. And it was great seeing you here in London again. I wanted to also say that Blazity just recently released a new white paper, an ebook that you can get from our website. It's titled The Revenue Cost of Slow. You can easily find out how it's structured. You can download it from our website. So I highly encourage everybody to look and check it up. Thank you again.
I just want to say that I read the book. I read this, and I just want to say there's very little content like that with such a high quality.
Thank you.
Like I've seen those use cases and those recommendations, those go down to detail.
Yeah.
It's really amazing.
Thank you.
I'm going to be recommending it to Vercel enterprise customers.
Thank you.
And you're saying that, we're walking away with more questions than answers. By the time this comes out, maybe half of them will be answered by the internet. But I think the other half are still going to be questions for the next few years.
Absolutely.
It's better to think that way than just trying to answer everything. Because again, we could write answers to everything. Then in 2 weeks, it'd be completely out of date. And everyone has moved on to something different.
That's true. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye.
Awesome.